I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
We are Velocities in Music. On this podcast, Tom and I discuss an abundance of topics pertaining to modern music, including artist deep dives and monthly and annual new music wrap-ups, and occasionally other random topics. Like today, Tom.
Yes.
We want to reflect on the Grammys.
Yep.
2016 Grammys happened last Monday, reflecting over, I think it goes from like October 2014 to September 2015 or something like that. Some crazy random, year, but that's the way they've always done it, so that's okay. So we're going to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and other colorful commentary regarding our thoughts and feelings on the most public corporate annual music event.
Yep.
But before we get started, you guys can help support Velocities in Music. Subscribe to Velocities in Music on your favorite podcasting device to automatically get our latest podcast episodes sent to your device each week. Also, Velocities in Music doesn't want your money. We also don't want to introduce ads to this podcast right now. All we want is for you to share Velocities in Music with your family and friends whom you think would benefit from joining in on the music discussion we try to create every week. So, Tom.
Yeah?
What'd you think about the Grammys?
Well, it was another year of the Grammys.
It was another year of the Grammys. I will say, I'm just to as like a caveat to this conversation. This is gonna be pretty off the cuff, and colorful. Tom and I, we took some notes over the course of watching the Grammys together with our wives last Monday night, and it was a great time.
It was fun.
First of all, I enjoyed having you over.
Yes,
Thanks for coming over.
Yeah.
But I will say this: like, I'm not going to be able to add a lot to this conversation because I don't know most of the artists that I saw on stage. I really don't.
But maybe that helps give you an unbiased perspective, and I think that there's something to be said for that.
Sure.
But the Grammys, as we talked about in our kind of pre-show kind of thing leading up to this, it's really kind of a train wreck a lot of the time. It's really all very commercial. It's very pop based. It's really, they try to pretend that it's based on artistic merit, and let's face it, the way that it turns out, it just doesn't really seem to be that way. You could tell there were a lot of agendas to push, especially with the gentleman from the recording industry and Common giving their little spiel about purchasing music and not streaming music, and you can just
and
tell.
They guilt tripped you a bit.
Right. Oh yeah, they totally tried to guilt trip you. That was that thrown into the middle of it. I just feel like it's this group trying to stay relevant in a culture that's changing and trying to keep it in a way that they can make money off of. When really, I feel like if they had seen this coming and just tried to change with the times, maybe been a little bit more open about including more diverse artists and so on, I think it would have stayed more relevant. And at this point, it just seems like they're grasping at straws and desperate to make the most flashy, sensational thing that people will still be talking about for weeks. And I mean, I guess we're adding to that, talking about it like a week later, but this is more a critique of it rather than an endorsement or a celebration of it.
Tom, and we're making a podcast episode and a half on the Grammys, but for us, I think it's not as much trying to critique what the Grammys are. I mean, everyone knows what the Grammys are, right? And so we're not really saying anything that hasn't already been said and critically about the Grammys. But I think, like, honestly, for me and you, knowing us and our views on music and things in the world in general, you and I need to talk about this just to vent because it's so damn frustrating.
It really is.
That something as pure and as life-giving as music can be bastardized so much every single year. Because I think, like, when it comes down to it, the Grammys aren't made for music fans.
No, I don't think
the
so.
Grammys are made for that person who's trying to that listens only to the radio and is trying to stay up with the trends, listens to like those morning shows where they talk about 10 signs that your significant other's cheating and how to look good on your wedding day and things like that. It's not made for people who are actually looking for something in music. Now, that said, there are some artists that seem to be able to span that horizon of being able to be very creative, be like a recording and a true artist, right? And also break into that corporate stratosphere and be able to conquer that world as well.
Right.
There's been many good artists over the years that have been able to do that. The most notable one I think this year is Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar, I absolutely agree. To me, it comes back to the old adage of a broken clock is still right twice a day. The recording industry and the folks who run the Grammys, naturally they're going to not be able to ignore some artists who are making a lot of noise. And I think that the pop scene gets it right sometimes. And you're absolutely right that this year, the prime example of that was Kendrick Lamar.
Right.
Sometimes there are artists that people just can't help but get behind that actually still find that sweet spot of crossover between popular appeal and actual artistic merit and achievement. Yeah. And I think that's what we saw this year. But, the problem is, going back to that broken clock is right twice a day thing, it means it's going to be wrong most of the time as well. Right. And that's how I felt about the Grammys this year. Of course, there are some redeeming moments because when it comes down to it, you're still getting a lot of super talented people in that room. And it's not like everything that happens is just going to be crap. You're going to have some positive moments, but man, it just feels like the negative ones certainly outweigh.
Tom, you made the point a couple minutes ago that the Grammys haven't really changed over the years. I mean, they've slowly evolved. I think that there's, obviously less awards and more performtive nowadays.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Than in the past. And I think that, that's part of the big display, right? And really, I mean, like they've adapted the award show over the years to be less of an award show and more of just a blitz of extravagant performances. And the idea here is to get viewership to sell commercials. Let's not forget this event is designed to get viewers and then sell ads. Like that's why they do this every year. It's not to show off all these wonderful performers. There's a corporate profit based thing driving this. But, it's interesting to me because, as far as how the internet has changed music over the years, of course, the internet has changed music, its distribution, it's just in general, its composition, but the internet is also changing the Grammys.
Yeah.
But it's almost going in a different direction than I would expect it will, because it's like they're so stubbornly clinging on to profits and the profit motive that as people today have such a different type of access to music. Not only do you have services like Spotify or YouTube where you can literally just type in any artist or genre and come up with a million different things that you can listen to, millions of different search results of things that you can listen to. So there is no limit to the amount of music that you can listen to today. And in addition to that, your exposure to like the rising acts, all the knowledge is there at your fingertips. You can set up, you can read music blogs or set up a Twitter feed or other RSS feeds that you can just get updates of new artists that are coming out, and so any person can be much more in tune with the underground scene. The whole idea that there's this indie underground scene doesn't really exist anymore because everything's out in the open.
But what's funny is I think the key point that you made there is people can be in tuned to what's going on if they want to, right. But they still have to go out of their way to. And to me, what the so-called information age and the internet has really proven is just how many people don't care enough to actually look into that. Because, and I've mentioned this before on podcasts, I'm going to come back to it because this was just like a wake-up call of a phenomenon when Arcade Fire won Album of the Year and no one knew who they were. There's no excuse for that. If you like music or claim to like music, I just feel like, you don't have to be an Arcade Fire fan. You don't have to know every single one of their songs, but good God, you really have to have not tried to just completely, in order to avoid that band for the, 6 or 7 years between their first album and when they won Album of the Year.
Right.
And so to me, it just kind of proves like, yeah, the information can be out there, but people still have to take that extra step to go find it.
Right.
Maybe it's only one extra step and not the 5 extra steps that it would have been pre-internet, but it's still more work than some people are willing to do. And I think that it's great to have that information available, to have the music available to people, but it's strange to me how little that has actually changed things, just because the availability doesn't change people's mindsets. It doesn't change people's priorities. It might make that information closer to them, but they still have to take that step. And what the Grammys in the last 5 or 6 years have really proven to me is that people are just not. They tune into this one commercial televised event every year and tell themselves that makes them music fans, when really there's no excuse, because it's all right at your fingertips.
Yeah, and I doubt the Grammys will change, because it's not made for the people who are seeking out music, who are looking, like, music is to the masses, to the vast majority of people. And I feel like I'm in the safety of this podcast. I can say this because those of you out there listening to Tom and I speak every week on our podcast, you're not the type of people who are just ignoring.
If you're going out of your way to find this little small time podcast, then you must really care about music.
Yeah,
I think we can take that as a precedent.
Yeah. So most of the masses, I mean, music is just functional to them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't actually, it's about, like, experiencing a mood or enhancing a mood or being background music or getting pumped up. If I hear in the weight room, pump up music. This is my pump up music. Like, you obviously don't listen to music at all for anything other than just the general mood and emotion, and like you're so disconnected with yourself that you don't even realize what this music is doing to you and how it's doing it, and you just let it happen. To me, it's like it's absolutely mind blowing. But so I doubt that the Grammys will ever change. This is actually the first year, Tom, because you wanted to do this podcast and sit down and watch it together and actually take an effort to analyze the Grammys and why they did. This is the first time I've ever watched the Grammys straight through. I've put it on before and seen like a little bit of it here and there, but I've never sat down and watched the whole thing. And it's been years since I've even put it on TV. So I gotta say, like, it was different than I thought it would be. Mostly because it was mostly performances and not at all awards, which I would have rather than be more awards, of course.
It was a 3.5 hour event, and I think we got through like seven awards on actual television. I mean, so at that point we're averaging one every like 30 minutes. Yeah. And how long does a freaking award take it takes like 30 seconds. Someone gets up there, reads the nominees, and then reads the winner, and someone comes up and gives like a quick speech.
I have no idea if this is accurate or not, but it felt like it was 2 performances, 2 commercial breaks, and 1 award. Like that was the algorithm.
Was the ratio.
Yeah.
That might be right. And I almost think it might even be more than that. Yeah. But
the last thing I wanted to comment on before we start a walkthrough of the Grammys is there was one commercial, and I forget what product it was for. It was some music product, some like speaker product, like Bose or something like that. But it had Killer Mike, St. Vincent, and Amy Clark from St. and Matt Berninger from the National. Mm-hmm. And it was 3 artists, and I remember thinking, wow, this is like the 3 artists I'm most interested in, and they're in a commercial between one of the performances at the Grammys.
Right.
And honestly, I remember thinking to myself, I hope none of these 3 artists who I actually love all 3 of those artists, I hope they never show up at the Grammys. I hope they never get to the point where they're winning awards or performing at the Grammys, because it means that they've done that crossover. Not that I have anything against artists that do that, but it's like the hipster in me wants them to be, this quiet little thing that they're just, quietly making genius music and not getting recognized for it.
St. Vincent's self-titled album was actually there for Best Alternative Album in the last Grammys. Yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh. But, as far as the National and Killer Mike, I honestly, off the top of my head, can't say whether they would have been acknowledged in the past. Yeah. But it's still, I mean, just the general like group and general caliber of artists, you're absolutely right. I feel like that commercial better represented the talent that's out there than the actual awards show did.
Yeah. So, Tom, you ready to jump right into it?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go through this chronologically.
Okay.
Talk about the events as they happened, and our thoughts on the events.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say, I have more bad to say than good, and I'm probably not gonna hold back.
All right, good.
Kick it off.
All right, so we started with a performance from Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff from Bleachers and Fun performing Out of the Woods from Taylor Swift's 1989, which Jack co-wrote with Taylor Swift, so it makes sense that he was performing that with her. And that was a good, energetic opening to the night. I think it actually kind of helped set the stage for just the kind of pop focus that the whole evening would have. Mm-hmm. But I will say this, Taylor Swift, while she's not my favorite artist, I can't call myself a fan of hers. I will say she's improved a lot since her early days. I remember watching Grammy performances of her, God, I don't know how many years ago it was. It might have been even like 7 or 8 years ago when she was kind of just getting started and getting acknowledged commercially, and whenever she would sing live, man, she just bombed. She was awful, and now I feel like she can actually sing, so that's something.
Yeah.
But that performance was something I'm never gonna ooh and ah over. But they did a fine, acceptable job.
Yeah, it was fine, acceptable way to open, and honestly, it was probably one of the better performances of the night.
Yeah.
And it did set the stage well. I thought it was decent.
Yeah. So moving on from there, we had LL Cool J come out as the host. I've always found it funny because, people make a big deal about the host of the Grammys, but they don't really do much.
Pretty much he was Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah.
He didn't really say anything. He didn't really make any jokes. He does like one, he doesn't really get the opportunity to, because the awards are presented by other artists. He'll like quickly introduce sometimes the artists who are giving the awards, but usually they even get other people to do that. Yeah, if anything, he felt more out of place than any
Right.
other aspect.
Which is sad, because I actually like LL Cool J. He's a good figure in music.
He's cool.
He's legit, but he didn't really do much. That's not really what the host does anymore. So from there, we had Best Rap Album, which To Pimp a Butterfly won, of course. If it didn't, I probably would have just shut the TV off right then and there.
I feel like if Kendrick Lamar wouldn't have won this, I would have been checked out the rest of the time. But the fact that he did win it made me actually intrigued to continue watching the Grammys. Plus, it's kind of interesting. They started with Best Rap Album, and they started with an award, so it made you think that it was an actual award show when it actually is.
They lull you in that
they did.
way.
They totally lied about what they were doing.
So after that, we had a performance by Carrie Underwood and Sam Hunt, and that was just boring as all hell.
Oh man, I puked in my mouth once.
It was. I mean, it was just the most inconsequential thing. It was all. I feel like the physical performance of it and like the romantic tension they were trying to create between these two impossibly good-looking people on stage was more the focus than the music itself. Which, they were doing a fine job of singing the song, but it was a song that was just impossible to care about. That was definitely a skippable performance for me. I did not give a crap.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
I hated this performance, and I just want to move on.
All right, let's move on. So now we have another performance, this time from The Weeknd, which I actually thought, and this is more in contrast to how much I disliked The Weeknd's album, Beauty Behind the Madness. I thought that this was actually a pretty decent performance. I think The Weeknd kept it pretty classy. He had the piano in there. He focused more on his R&B roots than he did, the kind of pop and club-based big synthy anthems that he's been known for the last year. And I thought it was pretty good, but that was more in contrast to how much I expected to hate watching him perform.
Sure, you were pleasantly surprised.
I was.
Yeah, so to me, I was also pleasantly surprised by his performance. I'm not the biggest fan of The Weeknd in general, but I will say I think that as far, the other aspect of this, grand setup and performances in stage that they're trying to create for the Grammys, just to make it so opulent that you're just in love with what you see. The performances have to be kind of over the top in their setup, and I will admit, like, that's part of the fun of doing this. It's kind of like Vegas. Everything is so just absolutely over the top that you have to just kind of go with it and have fun. Mm-hmm. It's just the experience of being there. The Grammys are kind of like that. Honestly, Super Bowl performances, halftime performances are kind of like that, right? So I will say, like, I felt like the Grammys strategically did a very good setup for this performance. Yeah. It was very dark. And then they had The Weeknd came out and he was just singing in his like what looked like a little space pod, right? And then all the lights were going on, and it really accentuated all of his strengths, his hairstyle, his flamboyant dance moves that I think channel Michael Jackson at times, and it just I feel like it was just a very strong setup, and a very good visual performance to watch. Yeah,
it was tactful.
It made it very entertaining and complemented his sound.
Yeah, you make a great point here, Jake, that I think we need to mention as well, is that I think just naturally there is a conflict and a problem inherently with televising live performances. You mentioned the Super Bowl halftime show,
Sure.
Same way. Grammys performances is the same way. Even like these live singing shows like X Factor and American Idol and The Voice. There's a problem with this because live performances are meant to be witnessed live right in front of the artist. What we are getting at home is the direct feed from like the mixing board and the microphones. It's being mixed and post-produced and then sent to our television screens and our speakers in our televisions. Like that is a way different experience than what the people are getting there. And it's not how live performances are meant to be digested and consumed by an audience. They're meant to be there. So, you think about being at the Grammy shows themselves or like the Super Bowl halftime show. It's the grandiose spectacle of it that makes it what it is. And it's the fact that all the sound is washing together in this big amphitheater or arena that makes it what it is. But when we as viewers at home get this like polished, broken down, isolated, perspective of it where we can hear every little detail in every drum, in every vocal nuance, like that's not really how it's meant to be heard. That's not what the nature of concerts are. So I think that
except most of these artists are mainly electronic artists. So.
Well, that's true. So there's something going to be lacking there anyway.
Right.
But in a way, like I would rather hear it in the big wash and echo of a big arena than I would, at home where it's trying to be like packaged to the individual listener. There's just something wrong with that, and that does not always translate well.
Yeah.
So we're going to see bigger problems coming up with that in a few performances. But I wanted to mention that with The Weeknd because I imagine his performance being there where maybe it seems in the whole like large presentation of it, I would think that his performance would seem even more intimate than it came off to viewers at home.
Yeah.
So worth keeping in mind.
And while his performance is decent, I still think I would be more entertained by like a documentary of how they create his hair.
Right.
I would find that much more entertaining.
That's the really captivating part of The Weeknd. It's just like, yeah, he's singing, but what is going on with his hair, man?
Yeah, and it kind of flops when he like moves around and does his dance move.
All right, so moving on from there, we had Best Country Album, which went to Chris Stapleton, who admittedly I'd never really listened to before because I'm not into country.
Nope.
But the dude seemed pretty cool.
Yeah.
He had a nice beard.
Yeah, I've been growing my beard out lately, Tom.
Yeah.
And so I got to say, I appreciated this man's beard. He really has a finely groomed beard. It's pretty beardy, pretty long, all over the place. Not really like the really trimmed beard. But I will say, for Best Country Album, the thing I got most out of it was Chris Stapleton's beard.
Yeah, Chris Stapleton's beard is a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, now
it's something we can all aspire to.
Now, I found it interesting that they put Best Country Album, that they actually did this award because there is like a whole country music awards,
right? Yeah.
Award show. But yes, of course, you're going to have Best Country Album televised because that just makes sense. Just obviously trying to get more viewers. Yeah. Covering that demographic.
What's the fewest number? I think this is what they go for. They go for like a point of diminishing return of what's the fewest awards that we can actually highlight that will pull in the most viewers.
Absolutely, they do that. They probably have algorithms written to calculate that.
Oh, why are they so smart? Okay. We're going to move on to the Lionel Richie tribute, which was performed by a smattering of artists. We had John Legend up there singing Easy. Demi Lovato comes in and sings Hello. Someone invited Luke Bryan to the stage. I don't know why. That guy is worthless. Meghan Trainor, and then who actually sounded all right in that performance. I'm not a big Meghan Trainor fan, but then Tyrese came out, brought the funk for Brick House, which is a great track, and it was cool to see Lionel Richie get on stage after that. I like Lionel Richie. I like the songs that they highlighted. I mean, whether or not he's this legendary artist that deserved his own huge tribute on the Grammys, I don't know. Of course, I'm always going to think that there's more worthy candidates, but Lionel Richie.
Was there any reason why they did a tribute?
It was, I think he won like like one of the Lifetime Achievements or something award, and also it was the 30th anniversary of his album winning Grammy of the Year. or album of the year at the Grammys.
Okay.
So it was more kind of a throwback and thing like that for the tribute. But it was cool. It just kind of seemed like it came from out of nowhere.
I'll admit I'm not the biggest Lionel Richie fan to begin with, so I found this entire performance to be really boring. And most of it was because it wasn't very over the top as far as like its visual display, like some of the other acts. Like The Weeknd or Kendrick Lamar, or even Taylor Swift's performance was much more grand in its presentation. This was just, a bunch of different artists getting on stage and singing. And my only comment was all the pantsuits that I saw the ladies
a lot of
wearing.
pantsuits.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the Lionel Richie way. If you're gonna tribute the guy, then you have to
Right.
you have to wear the pantsuit.
You have to.
So moving on from there, we had Little Big Town perform, and I honestly don't remember anything about this because it was the most forgettable thing ever. I didn't care about the band. I don't like the song. It was nominated for several awards, blah, blah, blah. I was ready to move past that. I think at this point, maybe we went and got a beer and some popcorn, or something.
Yeah, beer and popcorn sounds about right.
Yeah.
This was a good time to take a break.
It was also, I want to say maybe somewhere a little bit before this that our local news came on, and instead of watching the Grammys, we had to hear about the crap happening in Des Moines, Iowa. So we might have missed something there. So if it sounds like we skipped over something, it's because we were trying to figure out why the hell our local news was playing.
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah,
there was a double homicide in some random Iowa town.
Yeah,
and then they were saying the Grammys are going to start in an hour. We're like, wait a minute.
We're like, they've been playing. We've been watching them, guys.
Something's up here, and it's probably in the satellite broadcast.
Yeah, so we got that fixed. Anyway, moving on from there, we had Stevie Wonder and Pentatonix. And that was a pretty neat performance. I mean, honestly, I'm a sucker for Stevie Wonder. He's one of my favorite artists of all time. Everything he does is just golden. And so seeing a quick, just kind of what felt like an off-the-cuff little performance with him and Pentatonix before they presented the award for Song of the Year, I actually thought was pretty cool.
Right.
Because they didn't try to overdo it. They just relied on the simple genius that is Stevie Wonder. So where can you go wrong there, right?
And it was pretty funny when he opened the award because it was it had written it in Braille, so he said, "You can't read this." Na 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 na. It was pretty funny.
It was
Everyone
funny.
laughed.
He's a
I
funny
laughed.
guy. Yeah, that was a highlight for sure. So from there, Song of the Year ended up going to Ed Sheeran for Thinking Out Loud.
Screw that.
Yeah, Ed Sheeran's a fine, pretty boy pop singer.
Sucks.
But my point is, do they really not think that any better songs came out last year? Like seriously, like that's their number one. What are they listening to? I don't have anything more to say about that.
I'm just
like
getting
that's
depressed.
the best you can get.
I'm getting depressed.
All right, let's move on to the Glenn Frey tribute, which was Jackson Browne and the remaining Eagles. And, considering it was a pretty solid performance, I thought.
I disagree.
You didn't like it?
I was so bored out of my mind.
Well,
they looked bored out of their minds. It was so mundane in its presentation. Like, if you're gonna do all the Grammys is about being over the top.
Yeah.
What I hate seeing at the Grammys is when these performers get up, they're just kind of lackadaisical. They don't look like they give a shit at all. And how could you? It's the Grammy. Any decent artist probably doesn't give a shit about their performance on the Grammys because they realize how much of a joke the award show is. However, from an entertainment perspective, which, by the way, is the purpose of the Grammys, I want to be entertained. And when they just, it looks like I'm just watching these guys in an auditorium play with, spotlight shining on them, and they look bored as shit, I'm bored as shit.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the reason that we're a little bit separate on this one is because that's all I've ever come to expect from the Eagles in general. I'm not a big Eagles fan. Their music always sounds like bland vanilla adult contemporary alt country rock. Like I like Hotel California, okay, but I just kind of get bored with them anyway. So I didn't really come to expect much more. But you are absolutely right. It did feel out of place. It was kind of a blah streak in a night that's supposed to be a spectacle.
Yeah, and certainly worthy of a tribute for Glenn. So.
Yeah, that's true. Moving on from there, we had Tori Kelly and James Bay, two of the nominees for Best New Artist. A very stripped down performance. This was actually one of my favorite performances of the night.
James Bay just had an electric guitar, and Tori had the acoustic guitar. Yep. And at first, when they started, I was kind of was like, this is just like the Carrie Underwood performance. But then, I just found myself getting like absolutely blown away by this. Just they had the cameras like way down, like looking up at the two, and they were kind of like swirling them, but they were facing each other and playing like riffing off of one another, and it was just very melodic, very moving.
Yeah, the interplay was impressive. I like that there weren't these extravagant choirs backing them up or flashy crap. I mean, they just relied on their own very intimate, very precise performances. And I think that each of them, you know, for a show like this didn't necessarily capture that pop quality. So I feel like it was more authentic for that reason. I gotta say, James Bay to me was like the love child between John Mayer and Jack White. That's what he looked like to me.
Yep.
And actually, his voice wasn't far off from that either. But I actually thought this was a pretty cool performance. Admittedly, I've not checked out either of these artists, but I might actually go do that because I thought
that's how good the performance was.
Yeah, they
right?
actually did.
And not only that, this was, you know, I have a note here that says this was my favorite performance of the night at that point, right? But you know, the next two things, I mean, this really kicked off a period of time during the Grammys that was actually like the highlight of the whole night, and it was like they got it right for like 15-20 minutes straight. and it was actually really entertaining, really, you know, valuable things that I was seeing on the TV. So,
yeah. Moving on from there, we had another performance from the cast of Hamilton performing remotely. Hamilton is the hip-hop musical about the life of Alexander Hamilton. Kind of interesting. I guess they just decided, like, this dude's story is like the most hip-hop thing ever, so let's make a hip-hop musical about it, which I think is a pretty original, cool idea. That performance was really great, I thought. I would love to see that musical. I do like musicals, and that just seems like an interesting take on it. I thought the performers were fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, I'd heard a lot of hype about this musical before the Grammys, and so I was excited to see, you know, an excerpt of it. And I will say it completely blew my expectations. Normally when things are hyped, my expectations are pretty low. This blew me away. I would pay good money to see this if it was around here. Just because it was that good, I think it would have been a great show. So, I you know, would love to see this for more of this performance.
Mm-hmm. Next was Kendrick Lamar's performance, where he did kind of a medley of his songs. He started with Blacker the Berry, ended up going to some of All Right. I honestly don't remember maybe what else he might have performed because I was just so awestruck from the sheer energy and impact and power of his performance.
The visual stimulation of the performance that they put together, the commentary that it provided.
Yeah.
About our society and the state of things was shocking, and awe-inspiring is a good way to put it, Tom. I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, this is probably one of the most vivid and awe-inspiring performances that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then they changed the camera angle to look at the crowd, and just this sea of rich white people just absolutely mortified at what they were seeing, because this, you know, it hits home, right?
Yeah.
Like it really this performance was a wake up call.
And Kendrick did not hold back.
No, he didn't.
I mean, he was so just biting. He was extremely intense in a way that could not be ignored. But what I love is that none of that, not the visuals, not his general intensity or demeanor, took away from just the musicality of it. Mm-hmm. He was so spot on in his actual musical performance. And I love that the songs of his that he did actually felt like reinterpretations. They were kind of different versions for this kind of medley he threw together, and the backing instrumentals were different than how they are on his album. It was incredible in every single aspect.
Yep. And this is absolutely the highlight of the night. And Kendrick's performance will go down in history as one of just the best performances ever. On live TV, so that was pretty cool. It was something very awesome to witness. I mean, Twitter was just exploding with praise for the performance, and it hasn't stopped in the weeks since then. So,
Moving on from there, we had Best Musical Theater Album, which of course went to Hamilton. This is another thing that kind of frustrated me. Of all the categories they're going to highlight, they never highlight musical theater album. The only reason they did this is because they had a performance from that group, so you knew they were going to win. Why else would they even show this award on air?
It was very predictable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now I will say, was okay with me because how they accepted the award
That was awesome.
impressive. The guy pulled out a piece of paper and they obviously had a good inclination they were going to win because he had prepared a wrapped acceptance speech.
Yeah.
And and the main guy who plays Alexander Hamilton went and rapped the acceptance speech, and it was pretty awesome. I got to say, like, that was a very creative way to accept an award for best theater.
Moving on from there, we had best rock performance, and that went to Alabama Shakes, which, you know, they're a good group. They're a good group. I thought that they performed well.
They're a marginally okay group.
But okay. That's fine. That's fine. I think they're better than that. I do.
Okay.
But that's not even my argument. My argument is this. I have just an ethical issue with the fact that they won Best Rock Performance. They also won Best Alternative Album. If you're going to have multiple genre-based award categories for albums and songs, why are you allowing artists to be in multiples of those? Because clearly the way that you're splitting these genres is not clearly defined enough if an artist can just be in multiple. I don't think that's really fair. I think that you should do your due diligence and give credit to other artists. I just don't think it's right that someone can be nominated for and win rock and alternative. Yeah. Because if you're defining alternative to be different from rock, then acknowledge someone who fits that style better.
Yeah, I think Alabama Shakes makes more sense from the alternative award win than the best rock album. Personally, that's my opinion. And to me, this is the start of a very deep trough in the show, in the award.
Yes.
So, I was disappointed in this and then the next two as well.
Oh yeah, gosh, yeah.
Looking
ahead,
bad.
things really got bad.
It's
here.
like you hit the peak and then immediately the train started to crash and you're just watching it unfold.
Yep, and that's when we get to Adele's performance.
Oh God.
So this was rough, to say the least. Adele did not sing well. She was not on key. She was not hitting the notes. It was just kind of her and a piano.
There had to have been technical difficulties.
There were sound
there was
issues.
like this clangy noise going on.
Right. I wonder if it was like Justin Bieber warming up his acoustic guitar and somehow like the audio feed was being sent to us. But this was another time too.
I'm fine blaming it on Bieber. I'm absolutely fine.
Any time that we can blame it on Bieber, maybe we should defer to that.
Yeah.
But I almost wonder, though, you never know if the audience there was even hearing it. Once again, it might have just been sent to the feed. Maybe it was going to like Adele's in-ear. Who knows how it sounded in the actual, stadium. Yeah. But you could tell like visually just watching her face. She was troubled by it. She was flustered. She was a little flustered, and she would try. She's an amazing vocalist, and we all know that she can sing on key. Yeah, and she's had many amazing performances before. They had kind of been hyping this one up throughout the show. Oh, here comes an Adele performance. It's gonna be so bad, and then it was just awful. And every time she like missed a note, like you could see her kind of cringe in her eyes. Yeah. And you felt bad for her. Like if you're not human, I guess you would maybe not feel bad for her, but like I felt bad for her, and I'd like to consider myself a human. So, but like every time she would try, it was like she just kept trying harder, and it just kept getting worse. And by the time it was over, you're just like, thank God that train wreck is over. It was bad. Well, I was trying to figure out what the hell that clangy string sound was. Right? I wondered for a while if they had like a microphone inside the piano, like right next to the strings that like were picking up the actual clacks and like attacks of the hammers on the strings within the piano. But then it was kind of like coming and going so irregularly that I'm like, that doesn't make any sense with the way the guy's playing piano. So I like nothing about it made sense. It was just this strange, like curious mistake that's just inexplainable that came up during the night. And to me though, it was kind of its own little like microcosmic like indication or representation of what the rest of the night is like. It's just like this thing that should be artistic and good that just somehow ends up being a train wreck and you don't know what happened. Very true. So moving on from there, we had, oh God, save me. Justin Bieber, Skrillex, and Diplo. I think it's Diplo. Is it? Yeah. I don't fucking know. That's how they were saying it. Well, either way. I've always said Diplo before, but it's actually Diplo. The latter of the two formed the little group Jack U, and they performed with Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber actually started with acoustic guitar, and that was okay, considering it was Justin Bieber. I mean, if it was any other person, I would expect it to sound a little bit better, but it's more just kind of, it's nice to have a reminder every now and then that Justin Bieber actually does have some musical talent.
Whoa.
He can play the guitar, he can play the drums, he can play a bevy of instruments.
All right, look, being able to play a guitar does not mean you have musical talent.
I think it does.
I can play a guitar. I am not musically talented when it comes to guitar.
I think if you can play an instrument, that's musical talent. It's maybe like it's not like. I think that, personally, I would prioritize songwriting above that.
Sure,
but performance ability is still something.
Okay,
but that's where I leave it for Justin Bieber. That's why.
Well, first of all, I gotta say
that's as big a compliment as I'm trying to make some compliment sandwiches here.
I see that, and you're doing it with Bieber, which is confusing me, but whatever. So I will say it's been a couple years since I've really dived into Bieber's music, and I'm saying music with air quotes, and I gotta say he comes out and he looks very different than the last time we were really. He doesn't look like a boy anymore.
By that you mean drug addled?
He looks like he's on meth. He's wearing like this leopard shawl, like leopard print shawl, and he has like all this like dirty makeup on. His hair's cut, and he looks kind of like a rat, like a rat that got beat up in a bar. and he just looks like he's been doing a shitload of meth. And now his performance actually was I was pleasantly not as disappointed as I thought I was. I wasn't surprised by the fact that they actually like had him do something, because it makes sense at this point of his career that he either needs to reinvent himself or he's going to become absolutely nothing and go away.
But he's trying so hard to shed his like pretty teeny bopper boy image, and it's backfiring.
Sure. And then
because who does he appeal to now?
Right.
He's a man without a country. Like like a meth ratty looking Justin Bieber is not going to appeal to the 16-year-old girls, but it's also not going to appeal to anyone who's actually a rocker of any type. Like who's the demographic that he's going for? Because I don't want to meet them.
Well,
I don't want to be lost in a crowd of people who like Justin Bieber as he is now, because I don't know who that is.
That is the exact problem that the people putting on the Grammys were faced with. And that's why they paired him with Skrillex and Diplo. They had to pair him with some other like well-known kind of trendy artist. Both obviously Skrillex. Skrillex is on absolutely everything that has the word remix in it is probably involved with Skrillex, right? And Diplo is kind of in that same vein. They had to pair all of these guys together in order to sell Bieber and give him that to back him up, because he's such a weak item on the agenda, right? So. And then the performance honestly was garbage, right? Like I didn't find this song to be entertaining.
Awful.
Bieber was jumping around on stage. He looked completely idiotic, just the way he would just jump around, run around and sing. And he's not that great of a singer. He still has that like boy band voice, and over like glitchy electronic music, I didn't find that to be that entertaining.
No, what I thought was funny about this performance is that everyone on stage was rocking out.
It was so forced.
You had everyone pounding on these big drums and these big electronic synth things moving around.
They had a big stage with all the lights and everything, the big squares going on.
Everyone on stage had a lot of physical energy, but the music had none.
Right.
And once again, I don't know how it sounded there, but through our TV, it sounded like crap. It sounded like, have you ever watched any of those Shreds videos? Like there's some good ones online, like Beach Boys Shreds and like Creed Shreds. Okay, I'm gonna have to show you this later.
Yeah, you definitely are.
But it's where you take a live video of a band or an artist performing, and you redo the audio so that it just sounds really like weak and thin and flaccid. And it's like this was a real life version of one of those videos. It was just awful. Okay, now I'm just looking forward to seeing the look on your face when I show you some of these later. So. Let's move on from there, because that was just awful. I want to get it out of my system.
So after that was Best New Artist.
Oh God, and here we go. Meghan Trainor. The only kudos I'll give her is that she had a very humble, acceptance speech. It's nice to see someone in this industry with some humility still. But God, she just didn't deserve it. Of course, I'm going to be biased towards Courtney Barnett. I think she should have won because she is fantastic. But really, like, Meghan Trainor is the best new thing out there. do you really think that? I just I can't get this through my skull, man. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't internalize that. Like, how do you actually think that she is the best new artist? I don't get it.
I remember when we listened to Courtney Barnett's album last year, and I remember thinking, like, this really is something, this is so good that it's, I remember looking up and thinking that if she, how established is she? Is this her like third or fourth album? And then figuring out it's her first and getting really excited because it was such a good debut album.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see debut albums that good, so to see her not win was pretty disappointing. Yeah,
and it's one of those things where you're built up just to be let down, because I was so excited Courtney Barnett was even nominated. I'm like, oh, hey, maybe the recording industry is actually kind of getting something right now. They're acknowledging Courtney Barnett because that was kind of an offbeat release. But then they give the freaking award to Meghan Trainor, and I'm like, okay, you just confirmed all of my fears. So screw you guys.
So Kendrick Lamar's performance, which was like the highlight of the night, and then just everything trailed off for like the next 20 minutes or half an hour was just terrible. Absolutely everything just went south as far as my experience watching the Grammys.
Yeah. After that, we had Lady Gaga do a David Bowie tribute. Jake, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this one, because this was very polarizing for people.
Really?
As we were tweeting, on Twitter, looking at what everyone was saying throughout the Grammys, I saw a lot of people saying they loved it and a lot of people saying it was garbage. What did you think?
Well, I loved it.
Okay.
But I'm a fan of David Bowie.
Yeah.
And I think if you're familiar with Bowie's work, you thought that Lady Gaga did a great job.
I actually thought it was really good too. And I think a lot of the people who hated it love Bowie to the point where they just thought it was blasphemy for someone like Lady Gaga.
Give me a break.
I agree, because when you think about it, like, I actually thought it was a pretty good pick. Like, Lady Gaga, she's
I can't think of a better pick.
Right. Who else out there? Like, no, Lady Gaga is not David Bowie. But who out there in the pop scene would have actually done that any more justice? Right. It would have been awful. I thought she performed it well. She's a good singer. She's a good piano player. She's a good performer.
Well, she's clearly
in
been influenced by Bowie.
Oh yeah,
both
absolutely.
In her musical style and her just presentation of herself, of her celebritarian status.
Yeah. The only thing that frustrated me about this was I do feel like the whole medley was a bit forced. They only spent like 10 or 15 seconds on each song, it felt like.
That is very true.
Because they were trying to rush it along.
That is very true. Well, they were trying to fit in a huge body of work and pay homage to...
You can't recognize and acknowledge David Bowie's entire body of achievements in like a 3-minute performance.
No.
But that's what the Grammys is all about. Is trying to do a lot with a little bit of time, which, I mean, they still squelch to no end. But I actually thought this was a pretty decent tribute. I think Lady Gaga did an admirable job. If you don't think so, that's fine, but you try to not make it just about the fact that Lady Gaga's a pop artist, because she's really a pretty great artist in general. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't like her music, I don't think you can deny her talent.
Right.
From there, we had a performance from Bonnie Raitt, Gary Clark Jr., and Chris Stapleton, which was a B.B. King tribute. I thought this one was pretty solid. It was good to see them focus on actual performance chops rather than spectacle. Bonnie Raitt is an incredible guitarist. So is Gary Clark Jr. Once again, I'm not as familiar with Chris Stapleton, but I thought he did a good job too. What I like, though, is that they focused on style and matching that B.B. King energy and attitude rather than just showboating and shredding the whole time. This was a good, bluesy, kind of country-esque performance.
Sure.
I thought they did pretty good. It wasn't all that exciting. It wasn't very thrilling, but just from a musical perspective, I actually enjoyed this performance
that's
pretty
a good
well.
point, and all I can remember is Chris Stapleton's beard, so...
That's all I can remember from the whole night. Just like, if you can just like interpolate Chris Stapleton's beard on Kendrick Lamar's performance, that was the Grammys.
I just imagine like Chris Stapleton's head and beard on top of Kendrick Lamar.
Okay, oh God. There's a bad Photoshop job waiting to happen there. We'll see if that shows up. After that, we had a performance from Alabama Shakes, which was good. It was a very soulful and solid performance. I think that their vocalist has very impressive chops.
Sure.
Honestly, though, they're one of those groups that, to me, the tight backing band is fine, but it's all about the vocals.
Yep.
I would like to see
it's very one-dimensional.
Yeah, I would like to see the instrumentalists do a little bit more, which is why I think they're fine band. But I agree with you, Jake. I think that it's a little bit much to put them on such a pedestal for the Grammys, because I just think they are naturally kind of
plus
one-dimensional.
I'm probably going to be very much proven wrong in this now that I'm going to come out and say this in an internet forum, but I personally think this, like, Alabama Shakes is a one-trick pony. Their sound is so one-dimensional. Like, they're only going to be able to recreate their sound so many times, right?
Right. From there, we had the Hollywood Vampires, which was Duff McKagan, bass player from Guns N' Roses, Alice Cooper, Johnny Depp on guitar, and then Joe Perry from Aerosmith on guitar. This was just awful. This was just terrible in every way. This should not have happened. What they did is they got a bunch of big names on a stage and just did a gaudy...
Some pyrotechnics.
Spectacle. Yeah. Which they then turned into...
I mean, they are called the Hollywood Vampires.
Right.
Apparently this works. Like, people actually like this style of...
Dude,
like this.
It was just fucking terrible.
I remember you actually saying this when we were watching it, Tom, and I thought this was particularly astute. You said, it's sad because this is what people think rock music is.
Yeah.
And the Grammys is perpetuating that stereotype.
That's actually very
and
that's a good point.
This is so not representative of anything that rock music is. I mean, Alice Cooper, like artists like Alice Cooper, Kiss, and any other artists that are that, level of flamboyant, crazy, over the top, almost like a circus act rock show. That is not representative of rock and roll, in my opinion.
No, I don't think so either.
And the fact that that is what gets perpetuated because it shows well on TV, because you have a lot of flashing things and people
because people gravitate to extremes.
Swibbly-dibbly-doo on the guitar.
They gravitate to extremes and they want to see this over the top nonsense. But that's what it is. It's nonsense. It's not musically good. They transitioned into a little tribute to Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead.
Yeah,
they played Ace of Spades, which is admirable. Yep. But all it did was make me realize that nobody can sing like Lemmy.
Nope.
Because it was not musically it was not a good tribute. And I actually like some of Alice Cooper's stuff. I think I like him more than you do, Jake. But
yes, you do.
Because I like him at all.
Yes, you do.
But he did not sing that well. He just didn't do it well. I appreciate the thought of doing that tribute to Lemmy, but musically it wasn't there, and the song that they played before it was just putrid. I hated this performance. I don't want to talk about it anymore. So
it wasn't the worst performance of the night.
It wasn't?
No, I don't think it was.
What do you think was?
Well, we haven't gotten to it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, good point. So then we had the tribute to those in the music industry, musicians who have died over the last year.
I'm glad they do this.
They always do that, and I think it's good. They highlight some even lesser known people kind of working behind the scenes, and I think that's a fair acknowledgement, because in a night where it's all about the people who are up front and the focus, to take the time to actually acknowledge people who make music happen that you don't see all over the tabloids is really admirable. But I don't think there's really much more to say about that. Sure. That's what it is. So then we had Album of the Year award go to Taylor Swift for 1989, which, first off, how could you ever pick anything over Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly? That's just a tragedy in itself. Taylor Swift, there's nothing wrong with her, but this is what I keep coming back to. Do you really think it was the best album of that year? Do you really nothing came out that was even slightly better than Taylor Swift?
It's not about the music, it's about the money.
I don't have anything against her, but oh, good God. I did like the point that she made during her acceptance speech. It seemed a little self-serving to call out the fact that she was the first female artist to win 2 Album of the Year Grammy Awards. Okay, yeah, pat on the back to you. And then she kind of turned into this social commentary, which... I even kind of agreed with, but I didn't really appreciate the method of delivery there. I didn't think it was very tactful. But more, I was just so
more preachy
pissed.
than tactful.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
Kendrick Lamar didn't have to be preachy, and then just with his performance was made you really think about the way that our world is set up. He
lets his art speak for him. Mm-hmm. Is that something you can say about Taylor Swift?
Well, I mean that's what art is.
Right. But Taylor Swift doesn't know how to do that. Yeah. She only knows how to make those statements when she's accepting an award or putting something on Twitter. Like why can't you write good enough music to let the music speak for you? It doesn't say anything for her. Ugh, okay.
Kind of reminds me of Kanye.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he does even a little bit better of a job, but most of the time he's just ranting about shit on Twitter. At least that's what we're seeing these days. After that, we had Record of the Year, which went to Uptown Funk. I was fine with that. I actually think that's a good track. Keep in mind that Record of the Year focuses on production quality and performance. And you know what? I think Uptown Funk was a well-performed, well-produced track. I like that Mark Ronson on stage gave a shout out to George Clinton, who was in the audience, as well as, James Brown and some other godfathers of funk, because that song wouldn't have been anything without people like that. And I think it was good for him to acknowledge that, especially when there are so many people in today's youth and pop culture that know Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars and somehow don't know George Clinton or James Brown.
Right.
Like it was good of him to do that, and I actually have a lot of respect for the guy for being up there, being humble, and calling out the people that he really owed the success of that song to.
Right.
From there, we had the last performance of the night, which for some reason they gave to Pitbull. I don't know who invited Pitbull. But then it also had Robin Thicke and a bunch of other people, and I just got the hell out of there before.
Yeah, Jake, I didn't even finish
Jake, this is when I was running from your house screaming, pretty much.
Yeah, it was first of all an awful performance. Pitbull sucks. I mean, he's awful on recording. He's awful live, and he just looked like, first of all, a total bro on stage. But the other thing was the whole setup here, and this kind of goes to the Grammys. The way that they were closing the night was bringing out a bunch of very skimpy dressed women with large female parts, whether that is their upper body or lower body, and they were just shaking their bodies. That's all that this performance was. The Grammys decided to close the night something that is just a hair away from pornography.
Yeah.
and Pitbull and porn. That's how they closed the night. And I couldn't do it. Like, and what's funny is Taylor Swift had just made this speech about
women and art,
women's rights, and that was her a very preachy acceptance speech. And then 5-10 minutes later, Pitbull's performance is nothing that just absolutely demoralizes women. I was done at that point. Like the absurdity of just the absolute.
The visuals of his performance demoralized women, and the auditory aspect of it demoralized music.
Yeah.
So it basically
was the worst thing ever.
It completely deconstructed the purpose of the entire night.
Yes, absolutely. It was a slap in the face, and it was pathetic. Honestly, it was pathetic, and it left a really bad taste in my mouth. Other than that, 20-minute period right in the heart of the show that I actually did find to be really well done, really well put together, and very entertaining. This was an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I want to do this again next year. Sitting through that 4-hour debacle. Mm-hmm. If you wouldn't have been there, I would have probably drank much more heavily than I was. And I probably would have turned it off because I wouldn't have the wherewithal to continue through that. And I honestly can say, if you were to ask me next year to do this again, Tom, I'm not sure I'm going to say yes.
All right, we'll see how it goes. We might have to just see what the nominees look like and see if it's going to be
honestly,
worth it.
I think what we should do next year is, instead of sitting down and watching it, and we can probably do that just to get it off of our, get it out of our systems. By that time, I'll probably have recovered.
You still have these open wounds from it.
But I think actually, there was a ton of awards that they just didn't televise.
Oh yeah.
And in fact, we should probably go through some notable winnings there, right?
Like Muse winning Best Rock Album.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God.
I really hate that band. So I feel like we should go through and maybe do the award show ourselves, recreate the Grammys, the audio podcast of what the Grammys should be.
Yeah. I think that would be better than having
Velocities in Music's
performances.
recreation of the Grammys.
Yeah.
The Velocities in Music. I think that's what we should do.
All right.
Versus, and it's fine if, only like one or two people see it, because I'll feel much better about the fact that, at least one award show was done right.
Right. There you go. That's all we have the power to do.
That's all we have the power to do, Tom, to change the world. So that's what we're going to do. Well, Tom, we just looked up a bunch of the other awards that weren't on TV, since there was less than 10 that actually showed up on TV.
Yeah.
Not other than Muse winning best rock act.
Dance and electronica stuff going to Skrillex and Diplo, which I thought was disappointing.
There's really not a lot of things to talk about on the podcast, but feel free to look those up. We'll even provide the link for you guys to look up the other awards that were out there, since it wasn't much of an award show as it was just a over the top performance show with a couple of awards here and there, so they can call it an award show. Just to sum it all up, the Grammys suck, and it's not really meant for people like Tom and I who passionately care about music and want music to enhance our lives. It's meant for people who want to be entertained, and music is just another form of entertainment.
They're tourists to the music.
And that seems pretty harsh and critical and pretentious, honestly.
Yeah.
But and I'll call myself out for that. But that's how it is. I feel like that it's not going to change anytime soon, and I'm going to complain about it every year. I know, Tom, you're going to complain about it every year. Yeah. As long as I've known you, you've complained about the Grammys.
Yeah.
So it's just something that we have to get through every year.
Yeah.
And it's in it's in the middle of winter. We're just trying to get through it. We're all depressed in Iowa, seasonal affective disorder, trying to get through winter. So and the Grammys just added insult to injury. Really is what it comes down to. So it's a really depressing way to end this episode, but I will say this: next week, Tom and I are going to record our podcast for the February new music wrap up, and we are very excited for that. And then after that, we want to get back to doing an artist deep dive or a genre deep dive. We're not sure what we want to do that. I think, Tom, I'm thinking we should go genre. We haven't done that yet.
All right, yeah.
So we're going to pick a genre and pick out like a few of the absolutely essential albums that emulate that genre, that define that genre. And we'll go through those and talk about them and how the genre came about and what its lasting impacts on music are. So we'll be doing that in the coming weeks. So stay tuned, as always. Thank you guys for your continued support and participation in Velocities in Music. Tom and I love all of your comments on our YouTube videos, Facebook messages, and emails. Also, if you haven't noticed, we're very active on Twitter recently. Your participation is what makes Velocities in Music possible. So, as always, thank you for being awesome. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
We are Velocities in Music, moving music discussion forward.